Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With FishingBooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. FishingBooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to FishingBooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to DSC's Campfires with Larry Weishuhn, a unique blend of hunting, fishing, wildlife conservation, and the outdoor lifestyle. DSC's Campfires is brought to you by DSC, Conservation, Education, and Advocacy. Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable. Taurus, award-winning revolvers and pistols. Stealth Vision, high-tech, precision-driven equipment for today's modern hunter. Red 55 Winery, signature wines from Emmy Award-winning country artist Miranda Lambert, owned by Rick and Beverly Lambert. And the Choctaw Hunting Lodge, home of some of the finest hunting in North America. Now, here's Larry.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the DSC Campfire. Got a special treat this morning. I have Mr. Steven Murski. I'll get it right here in a minute, Steven, who guides for waterfowl. And many of y'all may recognize the Murski name from years of Ray Murski and Tom Murski being involved with Remington and guide and doing a bunch of things with Remington and a whole lot of other outdoor products. Of course, now also involving the Bliss Murski firm that Ray's son-in-law and Mike Murski, Ray's son, now do. So, but had the pleasure of meeting Steven here not too very long ago, had a chance to fish with him. But one of the great things that Steven does is he's very much involved in waterfowl and particularly guiding. So, Steven, welcome to the DSC Campfire.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me on, Mr. Weiss.
Well, it is my pleasure. I've had a chance to spend a lot of time around the Murski family, and I know that you guys are all hunters and outdoorsmen. So I heard through the grapevine, and I think you know the grapevine I'm talking about, that you have been doing a lot of waterfowl hunting. You kind of grew up that way, didn't you, with your dad?
Yes, sir, I did. I was probably 4 or 5 years old, and I don't know how it stuck because when I first started going with my dad, we would goose hunt on our lease down around Eagle Lake. And, we got down there and Dad would have me out there in a big butcher's smock with the tips of the arms painted white. He'd have me out there in the middle of the decoys flapping like I was a goose. So I think it was more free labor for him. He got to shoot some birds over me. But it stuck. I enjoyed every minute of it.
I absolutely love that. Daryl did not tell me about any of that. So I'll have to ask him about it next time you and I get a chance to get together, or hopefully it'll be the three of us get together and do a little bit of catfishing here, just north of where we live now. And that's an interesting way to get started. You've been around waterfowl for a long, long time, and I know that you've been doing a lot of guiding. Where all do you guide for waterfowl these days?
Well, I mainly guide down in El Campo, Texas. I own my own business, and I also work under Steve Biggers at Rocky Creek Retrievers. He gave me the opportunity to get started about 10 years ago. Very blessed for that opportunity, and really chased my passion. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time, and I've recently also, for the past 2 years, guided in Kansas for their late goose season up there. And so we're going on 10 years of it now, but, been hunting waterfowl since I was you know, 5 or 6 years old. So
since you started flapping your wings, right?
that's right. Since I could flap my wings.
Well, let's talk about those early days. Tell me what you remember about the early days of hunting with your dad and some of your friends, and what you saw in terms of waterfowl then.
Early on, like I said, we had a goose leap down around Eagle Lake, and that's known as the goose hunting capital of the world.
Yes, sir.
At that time, in the late 90s, the early 2000s, the Texas Gulf Coast wintered 1.9 million geese, which is a far cry from what it is today at about 300,000. But we'll get to that. Early on, when we would go down, there was a roost right outside Eagle Lake called the Vineyard. They still flood it today, just not to the same degree. But when the geese would get up in the morning, the sky would get black. They would roost 100,000+ geese. And at any given point in the morning, there'd be geese over your head. So I remember the sheer numbers, the volume. I remembered the speckle bellies coming early, leaving, and being replaced with cackling geese and lesser Canadas, and then kind of turning around and the speckle bellies coming back up on the reverse migration. I didn't duck hunt a lot as a kid. Kind of got into duck hunting myself when I was about 14, 15. I grew up a goose hunter. So those early days were some of the best, and seeing those numbers of birds is something that it's sad that I'll never be able to let my kids see. They'll never understand it. They'll never understand it. They can see videos or anything on the social media nowadays, but unless they go to North Dakota, South Dakota, Canada, they'll never see the true numbers of waterfowl that we held on the Texas Gulf Coast.
You know, you're exactly right. I went to Wharton County Junior College after high school, and before I went to Texas A&M. And we'd ride a bus from Columbus to Wharton, which was about a little over an hour kind of thing. Excuse me. And I can remember in the fall, from the time that you left the south part of Columbus all the way to Wharton, you were never out of sight of geese, whether they were flying, whether they were sitting on water, whether they were feeding, and the numbers were just absolutely phenomenal. And back in the late 70s, we had tremendous populations of snow geese, and to the point where they were concerned they were eating themselves out of house and home up in the tundra, just below the Arctic Circle. And I got to spend a summer up there banding snow geese, where we banded 26,000 white geese, trying to figure out where they were going so they could increase the bag limit to hopefully try to reduce that population a little bit before it kind of ate themselves out of house and home. Those were interesting days. I hunted geese back then a little bit down on the Prairie View area, down close to Katy, and then, like I said, a little bit down there in that El Campo and Garwood and Eagle Lake area. So those were phenomenal years with waterfowl. And the last time I was down there in any of that country during the time when normally there were a lot of geese, I did see geese, but I did not see geese like we used to. And what do you think's going on with all that? I know there's got to be some changes, and of course you're a lot closer to it these days than I am. So what are your thoughts on what's happening with those birds?
Well, I listened to a podcast that Ducks Unlimited put out here a couple years ago, and I think they really summed it up pretty well. It's not one thing. It's death by 1,000 cuts, the term they use to describe it. And, a lot of it has to do with water. Water probably may be the biggest driver. But, water, so the Highland Lakes built in up around Austin and the Hill Country were originally built for the farmers down here to be able to flood their crops, flood their rice.
Exactly, yes, sir.
Years of drought up there and not being able to get water because the river's too low and has really hurt. That happened back in 2010 and 2011. And it's just now we're going through it again. I think this year will be the first year that the rice farmers around Eagle Lake will be able to use the LCRA canal to be able to flood in 3 years. So,
my gracious, yes.
not having the food is one thing, but water is also the other issue, is the main issue, because water's expensive now. Water's not as cheap as it used to be. Fuel, if you're running a diesel well to pump it, diesel prices are high. Everything has just gone up. So let's say a club or an outfitter wants to flood a roost pond for geese. It's not feasible to put that kind of water on, thousands of dollars worth of water, to not hunt it or make your money back. And with the low numbers of geese that we have already, if the geese do not roost it, you're not making any money off of it. So, in turn, that's a problem. The other problem is Arkansas has started farming more rice than Texas. Far more rice. So when those birds don't have to migrate, they can go to Arkansas instead of flying this far. A bird is only going to fly and migrate as far as it needs to survive.
Exactly.
So they found a closer food source to their nesting grounds. They can have better body condition when it's time to go back. That's where they're going to choose to feed in winter.
And you, in a way, excuse me, in a way, you can't blame them. You know, I've seen this happen over the years, as you have, and as you mentioned, there've been huge changes. Of course, water is so very important in Texas anyway. We're a dry state, and with now, it seems like so much of the water that went to agriculture in the past is diverted to cities and things like that. People are more interested, I think, in having a green lawn than providing food for wildlife in some of those areas as they have in the past. And you talk about the migration. Years ago, you'd hear all this thing about the great mystery of migration. It wasn't really a great mystery because those geese up north, there wasn't anything for them to eat when it got cold and when it started snowing and that kind of thing. And they had to come to the Gulf Coast of Texas or somewhere close to it to find food and then, you know, go back home and roost and or nest and come back again. So, but now it's almost like we're short stopping them, aren't we, in a lot of different ways?
I believe we are, you know, and you hear the great debate. It's weather. Oh, we didn't have the winter. We didn't have the winter. And I agree. Our winters have been mild.
Right.
But when the birds have more food than they have ever had north of us, it's kind of a neat point. So I think these birds would still migrate if we had the weather. That's fine. What a lot of people don't realize is we need the weather before the winter solstice. Birds have an internal clock. They will migrate off of length of day, and that's what tells them, I need to go south. The weather pushes them, but the want to go south and need to go south is all internal clock from the length of day. So once our days start getting longer, then after the winter solstice, the birds, their mind switches. I have to go back up and nest. So while weather event may push them down, as soon as it warms back up, the birds are heading back north again. So we need that cold weather in October, November, and early December to really get a full push. Whereas these late fronts that we've gotten over the past few years in January, late January, February, they really don't move a whole lot of waterfowl.
You're exactly right. And it's interesting. I know that there are certain areas, too, in the Midwest where in the past there was very clean farming. Well, they've changed the farming practices in a lot of those areas. And I understand even in parts of like Iowa and some of those other states, like years ago, Stuttgart, because the ducks, they would come into that area because of the water and the food there unbelievably in terms of numbers. But now, with some of these farmers up north leaving more things in the field. And in some instances, I understand they're even flooding those fields. You think that's having an effect as well, too, beyond the rice that's being planted farther north? And I suppose a lot of that has to do, too, with what you were talking about, with cold weather and length of growing season and the rainfall kind of thing as well, too.
Yes, so there's no doubt. The hot topic out there now is, flooded corn. The biggest thing is with flooded corn. Everybody is going to have their own opinion on this. That's why I say it's a hot topic. But flooding corn is not a normal agricultural practice.
It's
And as the federal law reads, it should be illegal. But that's here nor there. You have very large outfitters across Kansas, Missouri, flooding thousands of acres of standing corn. The standing corn is flooded when the ducks start showing up, and as soon as their hunting season is over, these big outfitters are pulling the boards. And they say it's about the birds. It's not just about us hunting them. It's about, body condition and feeding these birds. Well, why are you pulling the boards each day if your season's over? I watched a very big name outfitter, and I won't name his name, on Facebook this year, and he's pulling his boards the day after season's over, and he talks about how, that cornfield's been fed out for weeks anyways. As he walks down the levee, spooking up thousands of mallards as he walks. Well, they're darn sure not in there just for the joy of it. They're in there eating.
No, they're not.
So it's a hot topic, and I think it's another reason that the birds are short-stopping, particularly the mallard duck in particular.
Right.
But it also has to do with weather. It's not the only reason. So that's why it's such a hot topic. The only way this would ever get solved is if, and I do not like more government control, but the only way to ever solve this would be to shut it down for 5 years and do a study and see what happens.
Exactly. It'd be interesting. I mean, there's so many bird banding programs going on. They could tell very easily because of that where those birds are going as well, documenting it, not just documenting it with photographs and that kind of thing. That would be really interesting to see happen. Are any of the we're talking about ducks and ducks as well, not coming down like they used to. I take care of a place up in the east of Dallas that was set up years ago specifically for waterfowl with flooded timber and food and all those other kind of things. And the most mallards I saw on that place this year at one time was 7. And I can remember just a few years ago when it was, as you mentioned, late at times late in the, as those birds came in or were leaving, the sky would turn almost black. And yet now this year, the most mallards I saw on that property were 7. Now, I did see a few pintails, and I understand pintail populations in certain areas are starting to come back. Are you seeing some of that as well, too?
Well, the pintail population as a whole is actually still on the decline. They haven't had a good year in many years. But, the federal U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service went to an adaptive harvest management plan on the pintail. And instead of allowing us to harvest one bird, they're saying, look, as hunters, we don't harvest enough pintails to drive the population either way. So what we're going to do is we're going to allow you 3 pintails, and we're going to do this for a set amount of years. I think it was 5, and we're going to see what happens. The problem with the pintails is when they go back home and they go to they go to nest. When they go to nest in Canada, Prairie Canada, pintails love short grass prairie. That's why they have those tall necks. They can get up and look above that grass and look for predators. And, when they get up there and there's a little pothole of water in the middle of a wheat field that was harvested last year, it looks an awful lot like short grass prairie.
Right.
So when the farmer goes in to plant his crop in the spring for that year, he's running over and destroying hundreds, thousands of nests. Yes. Not just one farmer, but across Prairie Canada, they're destroying thousands of nests. And some of those birds are in molt at that time, and they're also killing adult birds.
Yeah, they're flightless at that point. A lot of them.
So it's a very intricate problem, and there really isn't a great solution for it, except for maybe to spread some word in Prairie Canada and maybe have some of these farmers go to winter wheat, and that way their wheat is already in the ground.
Exactly. exactly. And part of that would be it would become an educational program but how do you think those farmers up there feel about those birds on their property? Do you think they really care about them? I mean, I'm asking you kind of a loaded question here in a way, but do you think they care enough to do something like that?
I don't think they do. I think they'd have to be incentivized, and once again, that has to be incentivized by the government. And when the government starts spending money and allocate things tend to not go very well. So, I think somebody like DU would have to come in, or Delta Waterfowl, and start locking up some land and some easements. And I think they do have a program where they're trying to educate farmers up there, but it's just not enough. And then the drought in Prairie Canada has been really what's hurt these waterfowl populations over the last 5 or 6 years. That's another thing. People say the ducks, we're not shooting as many ducks. We're not seeing as many ducks. Well, if you look at the totals on the spring count, on the summer counts, and they're counting these birds, the populations are down. And, we had to go to a 9-day teal season this past year, and we'll be again this year, because the population for breeding blue wings is below the federal threshold. So instead of a 16-day season, we have a 9-day season.
And that's in a way, is sportsmen actually really caring about those animals or those birds enough to do that, to in their own kind of way sacrifice something. That speaks well of the guys who are out there actually hunting, although I know they'd love to have a 16-day season regardless. But it's interesting. I've years ago, I spent a fair amount of time working with waterfowl. In the last several years, I have not been as involved with it. So with our conversation here, you're giving me a lot of good information that I would have not otherwise probably even tried to go after. So I really appreciate that. We've talked about some of the hard things that we're facing. Are there any positive things that you see that are happening or down the pike as far as waterfowl is concerned?
They pale in comparison to the negatives, which is unfortunate. Yes. But I think the bright side and what people can be optimistic about is knowing that this drought will break, especially in Prairie Canada, in the Dakotas, and these birds are gonna everything is cyclical. They're gonna bounce back, and it may take a few years of bad hunting, and we've already had that. But when it bounces back, it'll be just as good. And people need to look forward to that and realize it's about the ducks. It's not about us. We get to go out and enjoy them and enjoy the resource, but at the end of the day, just enjoy what's coming, because it will get better.
It will, and you're right. It is very cyclical in so many different ways, and wildlife tends to be that way as weather does as well too. And of course, weather influences so many different things, including the wild populations that we have. I want to switch horses with you a little bit. I want to ask you if you went up with your dad to hunt sea ducks up in Maine when he was up there.
I'm sorry, I lost you. I went to the bottom.
Okay, I was asking, have you hunted sea ducks up there in Maine as your dad has?
I have not hunted sea ducks in Maine. Actually, the only sea ducks I've hunted was a couple of years ago. My dad and I and friend and my wife went up. We went swan hunting in North Carolina, and we all harvested a swan, and then we did one day of sea duck hunting on the Pamlica Sound, and that was the extent of it. Harvested one bird. A big norther came in the night before and kind of pushed the birds out of the area.
Oh my God! I was going to ask you how you thought it compared to some of the hunting that you've done, in the prairie areas. But that unfortunately, with the weather again playing an important role there, pushing the birds out, kind of changed my topic of where I was going to end with all that.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about your guiding service. Let's talk about that. We've kind of hit the negative side on some of the things, but there are positive things, and there's still some absolutely great hunting to be had. And I know that you hunt some fabulous areas through your guiding service, and then maybe some of the other things that you do as well too.
Yes, sir. No, we hunt down around El Campo, Texas, between Garwood and El Campo. The landowner that we hunt on is very conservation minded for the ducks. He actually runs a local DU chapter down there, and they raise a lot of money for the birds. And it's great hunting with somebody that cares about waterfowl and cares about habitat. So we still have the habitat, and it gets put on for the birds when they show up. We still have very good hunts. Our bird numbers have been down for the past few years on harvest numbers, but we still have some really good hunts and some really good times in the blind, and not lose sight of what the hunting is about. You're just out there enjoying the resource. It's about getting out and enjoying it, not so much killing. But we do have some good hunts. We hunt early teal season. It's going to be 9 days again this year, so we'll have 9 straight days of hunting blue-winged teal, and then we start up again in November, and we run November all the way through the end of January, hunting ducks, geese, and sandhill cranes. So there's still a lot of opportunities to be had, and if you want to get out and come hunting, then you need to check it out while the prairie is still good, because the prairie is slowly dying with the city encroaching on it. But there's still a lot of good hunting to be had in that area, and it's still the heart of the prairie.
Absolutely. I remember down around Katy years and years ago, which is now all town and city and houses and things like that. Hunted down there a little bit, and some of the areas I hunted now kind of almost seem like in the center of Katy, and that has changed things a lot in so many different ways. Sandhill cranes. Tell me about your sandhill crane hunts. Are you guiding for those, or you primarily just hunting for those personally?
No, I guide for those. We've had a rough past 2 years hunting for them, but I do guide for them. We hunt them over decoys. We shoot decoying cranes. We harvest 2 here, and a lot of people hunt in the Panhandle. They can harvest 3. That's mainly because those are lesser sandhill cranes up that way. We get a majority of greater sandhill cranes, so we can harvest less of them. But it's normally typically pretty good. I'll try to pattern them out, get them in the field for 2 or 3 days, and hunt them on the 3rd or 4th day. And normally it's pretty good. They decoy well, and close. I would like to get them pretty close. So it's a lot different than duck hunting. You get to watch them come in. They're slow moving birds. They decoy really slow, and they put on a good show.
And they're pretty good to eat most of the time too, from what I recall.
They're very good to eat. They are very good to eat. They don't call them ribeye of the sky for nothing.
Absolutely. I did a little of that years ago when they first opened the sandhill crane seasons up in the Panhandle. I got to go up there and shoot a bunch of birds over the years. But it's been a while since I've hunted sandhill cranes. But I remember them being extremely good to eat and fun to hunt as well too. Tell me about your hunting service that you have. That's your personal hunting service. Where all do you hunt, and how do people get in touch with you?
So I own and operate Weishuhn Outfitters. I hunt down, like I said, in El Campo. We do the September teal season there, and we do November through January ducks, geese, and cranes. Geese and cranes when they're there, obviously. We'll take you hunting if there's not. But then I also hunt in Kansas 2 weeks. May have an opening or 2 for that coming up this year. But they can get a hold of me. I have a Facebook page. They can follow Weishuhn Outfitters on Facebook. I'm not as active on it as I should be. Or they could get a hold of me on my cell phone.
Fantastic. Where do you want to give the cell phone number, or do you want to just send it somewhere?
No, it's my cell phone is 979-203-7333.
And I'll make sure that gets into the show notes too, if that's all right with you. So
that's not a problem.
I'll tell you what, Steven, I really enjoyed visiting with you. I look forward to spending time with you in person rather than here on the phone and the podcast. And I'll talk to your dad, and hopefully we can get together on a hunt sometime this year and a little bit later on, but also maybe do a little bit of fishing if you're up this back here have a day or two, and he has a day or two that we can all kind of slip away a little bit.
Oh, I'm sure we can make that work.
we're going to do our best. Steven, thank you so very much for being with us here around the campfire this morning, and look forward to spending time with you again here in the very near future. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening, make sure that you get in touch with Steven, because I tell you what, if anybody knows anything about waterfowl, as you just heard, this is the guy that you want to go to, knowledgeable and very successful in what he does. So, Steven, all the very best of luck, and look forward to catching up with you before too very long.
Yes, sir. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
DSC's Campfires with Larry Weishuhn has also been brought to you by The Crown Bar in LaGrange, Texas, the Texas Wildlife Association, Double Nickel Taxidermy, and Burnham Brothers Game Calls.